Welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast that prepares you for one of life's toughest yet inevitable moments, stepping in when your parents need you most. Hosted by Chris Spade, a senior real estate specialist with Keller Williams Realty. We'll dive deep into more than just moving. We're talking smart financial planning, making tough decisions with confidence, and strategies to avoid being caught in crisis mode. Join us for real stories, expert insights, and actionable steps to stay ahead of the curve. Now, here's your host, Chris Spade.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. I'm your host, Chris Spade, with Keller Williams Realty San Diego Metro, the podcast for all Gen Xers navigating the complex and often emotional journey of helping our parents age, relocate, and downsize with dignity. Now today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm flying solo. And I'm going to be reflecting on the incredible wisdom of our past guests that they have shared because, let's face it, we've covered some game-changing stuff over the last 16 episodes, and there's more to come. So whether you're helping mom plan her next chapter or figuring out what the heck a Delaware Statutory Trust is, you're definitely in the right place. Now, before we dive in, make sure you hit that follow and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you find this helpful, share it with a friend who's walking a similar path, and let's grow this community of informed and empowered decision makers. So what I want to do is go over what we've learned so far and go over the golden nuggets from each and every guest. So let's start out with our first guest, Karen Leventhal. She is an aging in place specialist. Now, Karen stressed the importance that aging in place is not a one-size-fits-all solution. In fact, Karen says that planning is key and having a phased roadmap, even if you're not ready to implement all the changes right away. So, we talked about crisis mode and not being in crisis mode. And, if you're, for example, have had knee surgery or your parents have had knee surgery, what things can you do now in the home so that way they age in place better? She talks about small upgrades like grab bars, better lighting that can all be installed to make an immediate safety impact while preserving independence. And these things don't have to look and be clinical. So, for example, she talks about how she can put in grab bars that don't look like grab bars, for example, or redesigning a bathroom that's going to fit for your loved one that's not going to be looking like some sort of clinical hospital bathroom. So there's a lot that can be done in that space. She also talks about the emotional resistance often stemming from fear when you're making these modifications, not necessarily logistics, but acknowledging this fear can open up the door for honest family conversations. And that's what we're trying to do on this podcast, is really start honest conversations within our family so that way we don't have any issues with our loved ones. We want to make sure that they feel good about themselves and they feel good about the decisions that they're making. And so that really excites me as we make this journey and we're learning from these experts together. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Paul Downey from Serving Seniors. I want to give him a shout out because Paul is retiring this week and they just opened a brand new community center, a senior center over on Balboa and Genesee. And Paul and Serving Seniors does great work. Paul talked about isolation as a public health issue for seniors. And we're going to be talking to the folks over at the Villas in Bankers Hill from St. Paul's and how they combat isolation within their community. But Paul talks about how isolation is a big issue. He also talked about Paul shared how access to nutrition, housing, and social interaction directly impacts longevity and well-being of our seniors. We can't have our loved ones isolate, because isolation is going to be the downfall, right? And so, like I said, St. Paul's has a way to deal with isolation within their own community. He talked about low income and homelessness for seniors often fall through the cracks, and serving seniors fills that gap with holistic services. And so serving seniors serves 1.7 million nutritious meals every single year to seniors who are low income, need food assistance. They're there, and they can either come and get their lunch and go home with their dinner, or there is delivery services available. And so there's community resources out there that seniors all over San Diego County can tap into. This is countywide, and I'm excited because Keller Williams this week will be volunteering at Serving Seniors for what we call Red Day, which is Renew, Energize, and Donate. And Red Day is just an opportunity for Keller Williams agents across the world to give back. So we're going to be volunteering at Serving Seniors, and we're very excited about that. Paula also talked about purpose and how purpose mattered, whether it's volunteering, participating in classes, or simply sharing meals. Meaningful daily engagement changes lives. So Serving Seniors is always looking for volunteers. And if you are interested in volunteering at Serving Seniors, you can do that. You just have to fill out a volunteer request on their website, and they will get you in. And we're looking forward to doing that this week. All right, let's talk taxes and fiduciary. So our fiduciary and tax specialist, Lacey Italiano, she talked about how important it is to include seniors in financial decisions because it preserves dignity and protects mental well-being. Okay, so as our parents age, we automatically think that they're losing their capabilities to make decisions or make smart decisions, but we have to remember they have wisdom and they have experience. And Lacey talked about preserving dignity and including them in all financial decisions. Now, obviously, and we'll talk about this when we talk about, our estate planning section with Sandy Isaac, but you need to make sure that you're including your parents in all these decisions. It's not just you and you alone. She also talked about a common mistake. Parents who put their kids directly on the deed to avoid probate. I've seen this happen time and time again. Lacey explained how this causes capital gains tax issues later. A trust is the better solution. So if you are out there and you are listening to me and you are either a Gen Xer or you're an older adult, and you want to put your kids on the deed, don't do that. Get a trust, put the house in the trust. It makes things much easier down the road when we go to sell the property later on. You'll also avoid probate, which we'll talk about here in just a second when I go into the segment with Sandy Isaac. But don't make that mistake. It's a big issue. Now, her advice, avoid financial shortcuts. Hire licensed professionals who specialize in elder tax strategy and estate planning. That is so important. You do not have to go at this alone. There are people out there who I promise are smarter than you, because these people are smarter than me in their chosen professions. And this is why I go to them for the advice. I don't try to pretend that I know everything. I'm on the phone with these people that I brought you into the Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad community, because it's important that we talk to them specifically. All right, in our episode with Sandy Isaac, who is an estate planning and probate attorney, this was probably one of the most impactful episodes that we did, because she talked about how estate plans aren't just for the wealthy. Sandy stressed that wills and trusts reduce confusion, protect families from unnecessary court battles. So time and time again, what ends up happening is I've heard this from other estate planning attorneys. If you don't have a trust, then the state has an estate plan for you, and that's called probate. And you don't want to get stuck in probate. And the reason you don't want to get stuck in probate is because it can cause a lot of undue family stress, dynamics, fighting. But if you put this in a trust, it spells out specifically your wishes and what you want to happen after you're gone. And so this makes everything so much easier. It says kid A is going to be the successor trustee. And if kid A can't do it, kid B will do it. Or kid A and B will do it, but not C. Because sometimes we don't trust certain people in our family, and that's okay. But having that estate plan in that trust is important. She says trust-based plans give more control, privacy, and efficiency, and it's especially helpful when adult children live in different states. So, for example, I have lots and lots of kids who moved to Texas, moved to Georgia, moved wherever because it's cheaper and they just couldn't live in California. They chose to go to college somewhere else and got a job somewhere else and, or got laid off in California. So they're in different states. And so having that estate plan here in California gives your kids the ability to make decisions on your behalf after you're gone is so much easier, because here's the other thing that Sandy said. If you don't have an estate plan, it goes through probate, and the probate attorney is paid at the end. So you're not paying up front for the probate attorney, but the probate attorney is paid on the gross of the entire estate. So for example, let's say the estate's worth $1 million, but let's say you have an $800,000 mortgage. That means Sandy is paid on the gross, whatever the percentage is that the court sets, and the court sets the percentage here in California. But there might be very little left over, whereas if you have an estate plan and a trust in place, then you can go to sell the house, and that $200,000 is basically preserved to be split between your heirs. So that's the other important thing. Now, Sandy's big takeaway is start before there's a health issue or health crisis. Planning during peacetime protects everyone, okay? Because you don't want your family to go at war. So consider this peacetime, right? You want to do the estate planning now when there isn't a health crisis. So that way you're able to make good decisions for your family. And remember, if you don't have a trust, the state of California already has an estate plan for you, and that's called probate. And that can take anywhere from 9 months to 2 years to complete. All right, we're going to talk senior move managers, Jamie Shapiro. This was an awesome episode because Jamie, and this one was just on, Jamie talked about how downsizing is emotional. Now, Jamie does this thing where she uses magnetic boards and scaled floor plans to visually map out the move to help ease anxiety. So what she does is she'll go into your folks' home. She'll take a look at everything, and she'll take a look at the things that you want to take. And then she'll go through the new place, the new community, or wherever your parents are moving to. And she uses the magnetic board to do a scaled floor plan with the exact dimensions of what furniture they want to take. And she makes it so that way your loved one can visually see how comfortable it's going to be in their new place, in their mind. And what I loved about her story is that she says that they go in, they pack everything, they move everything within the day, they put everything away. So your mom or dad is literally not having to do anything. They're gone for a whole day. And in that day, you're gone with them. Then Jamie and her team come in. They pack everything up. They've had everything packed up the day before. The movers come in, move everything. Jamie and her team take it to the new place, unpack everything, put the cups away, put the Put the coffee in the cupboard. Make sure there's clean sheets on the bed. Put the clothes in the closet, and then walk you through the whole place so you know exactly where everything is. And that's really special because that way there's no chaos. There's no stress for your mom or dad, and they're knowing that they're in a safe place. She also shared that family members often rush this process when what's really needed is empathy and listening. So we've talked about this before, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes again, but you can't rush the process of downsizing, right? This is a big deal for your folks. It's a huge deal to downsize. And so often as Gen Xers, we get impatient, right? Like we weren't supposed to show emotion. We were just supposed to make quick snap decisions as Gen Xers. At least that's what I had to do in my family. And I'm sure, a lot of us had to make those quick snap decisions. And so we don't necessarily think that, we look at something and go, well, that's junk. Why would you want to keep that? But there's an emotion attached to that. And we have to remember that our boomer parents were the kids, our grandparents, kids that grew up in the Great Depression. So they saw how their parents did without, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. We can't just go and assume that, that chucking it is the answer. So we just can't do that. Now, her company also focuses on making sure seniors feel in control of the process, which definitely fosters a smooth transaction and a transition. So you're just going to want to really do some research and not just hire a mover when you go to move your parents. You want to make sure that they are a senior move manager and that they are certified by NASM, which is the National Association of Senior Move Managers, and that they're accredited. And so these are the things that Jamie's company brings to the table. And if you would like to get in touch with Jamie, please let me know. I'd be happy to reach out or help you reach out to Jamie. It's really, it's in your best interest to hire somebody who's going to help you walk through the process with ease and empathy. All right, let's talk about Jana York. Now, Jana York from Always Sunny Ramona Day Club. I love my conversation with Jana because she talks about senior day clubs and how they're underutilized resources. And Jana explained how they offer structure, connection, and purpose without requiring full-time care. And this is great because it gives the opportunity for you to have your parents drop into a place and spend the day there and do activities. And she explains how beneficial it is to adult children because your parent is engaged, active, and that your parent is looked after. And that's really important because, like Paul said earlier, isolation is a big deal in the senior community, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we're going to be talking, like I said, to St. Paul Villas in the future, in a future podcast in a couple of weeks, about how they deal with isolation within their own community and how they try to curb that. And this is kind of like a springboard to other forms of care. So she talks about planning for elder care before something happens, some sort of fall health scare that changes the trajectory. And she talks about having pre-crisis conversations with your folks. And that's really important, having those conversations, the what if then conversations. And so it's very, very important that as Gen Xers, these are oftentimes uncomfortable conversations to have. I've had them with my dad. We've talked about trust and estate planning because his whole estate plan is to not do anything, which is just going to leave my brother and I in pure chaos. That if that is what his choice is, then we will deal with it. But I prefer not to. And so these are a little bit difficult conversations to have, but these are necessary conversations. And they can be done gently. They don't have to be done aggressively. But it's just something that you want to think about and just kind of like go over it in your head, go over the conversation in your head a couple times. And I think that you'll find that once you do have the conversation, you might be met with a little bit of resistance, but after a little bit of time, it's like, the conversation starts to soften. And because we're getting older, right? I just dislocated my knee a couple weeks ago. I'm getting older. I'm 50. And, in my head, I'm like, I need to buy a new leg brace. I need to do this. What do I need to do? I need to make sure I exercise my knee even more because I want to avoid surgery. I want to avoid all these things. And so, I'm pre-planning in my head at 50 years old what it's going to look like when I'm down the road and I have a knee issue, because I've had this issue for 20 years now. I had it in my late 20s, early 30s. So pre-planning and having those pre-crisis conversations are super, super important, and they will get easier with time. They might be a little difficult in the beginning, but they will get easier with time, I promise. Now, one of my favorite conversations that I had with Rosemary Litoff about reverse mortgages. Let's talk about that. So reverse mortgages are not what they used to be. Rosemary explained how newer regulations make them safer and more flexible. I even hear this from a lot of my seniors that I've referred Rosemary to, and they're like, isn't that a scam? I think it was Robert Wagner who was on the commercials back in the 80s for reverse mortgages. And I remember my grandparents even saying that that was a scam, right? My grandparents were born in 1911 and 1918. And so I remember my grandma specifically, that's a scam, that's a scam. I would never do that. I honestly think that their house was paid off in the 80s at the time, but it's not that way anymore. They're not only for emergencies. Reverse mortgage can be a part of a larger wealth preservation strategy. So, for example, I've got a client working with Rosemary right now, and we're working with a reverse mortgage that's going to help her move into a new place. And this is important because it is part of your wealth preservation strategy. And there are fewer than 200 people that really have the certifications to do this kind of mortgage around the United States. So don't just trust anyone doing this. There's at least 2 people I know that just do reverse mortgages, and Rosemary is one of them. Now, most lenders say, oh, I can do a reverse mortgage, but they don't really specialize in it. And so you really want to make sure that the person you're working with is qualified to do that reverse mortgage. And if you need a connection to Rosemary, I'm happy to give that to you. But that is definitely, see, part of what we're doing on this podcast is giving you all the options for your family to stay in their home, whether that's aging in place, reverse mortgages, or we're going to talk about with Erica Sell. She's the home medical equipment expert, okay, at Harmony Home Medical. So, I hope you all don't think I'm here to just try to lean you into selling your folks home. I'm all about home preservation. And if we can keep your folks where they want to stay, I think that that's important. But Erica says accessible remodeling doesn't have to be ugly, just like Karen says. Erica's team builds bathrooms that are both functional and beautiful. Now, as we get older, like I remember seeing, back in the day, home remodels and bathroom remodels, they were just ugly and medical looking and just silver grab bars and plastic chairs in the bathroom. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the way old people live, when I was younger, right? But it doesn't have to be like that. Erica says aging in place starts with simple upgrades, no slip flooring, wider doorways, and brighter lighting. And she talks about passive safety equals active independence. Many seniors resist change, but these modifications keep them in their home longer. So I want to tell you about one of my potential clients. I went over, and she has a 2-story house, and I went over there, met her with her Gen X kid, and we were sitting there and we were talking, and she was like, well, I don't want to leave my home. I don't feel like I can. And the truth is there was enough equity in her home. Her home's paid off. She's been there forever. It's a 2-story home. and she did not want to sell her home. And there was, all the bedrooms were upstairs. There was it was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath upstairs, and then a bathroom downstairs with the living room, dining room, and kitchen. And so I asked her, there was a full bathroom downstairs, and I said, well, who comes over here? And she was like, well, nobody really, except a few of my friends. And I was like, well, when they come over, where do you hang out? And she was like, well, we generally eat outside, and, where we'll, sit and have coffee in the kitchen or whatever. And so I was like, okay, great. I was like, well, could we move your dining room table out of your dining room and maybe put your bed down here, and you can just live on the first floor, and you don't have to worry about going upstairs to the second floor. Hence, you don't worry about falling down the stairs. And it was kind of like one of those aha light bulb moments that went off in the Gen Xers head, in my potential client's head. And they were like, oh, we never thought about that. And I was like, well, yeah, if you don't want to move, and you don't want to sell, and you don't want to live in a community, and you've already got community because you've got your ladies coming over, then just do this. Change this. This is easy. And if we decide that down the road it is a better decision for you to sell your home, then let's do it. But right now, it just doesn't make sense. So don't do it. So let's come up with solutions. Let's talk about that. All right, let's talk with Ray. Ray, I owned. So estate sales. I love going to a good estate sale, by the way. And I'm sure all of us at one point are going to have an estate sale when we're gone, because our family is not going to want to keep our stuff. But Ray shared how emotionally charged estate sales can be. And he focuses on honoring memories while helping families let go, because that's really important. And sometimes, whatever the thing is, like multiple family members want the thing. And Jamie Shapiro talked about how, I believe it was these two sisters wanted a vase and a pair of earrings, and then they floated the vase and the earrings back and forth. Every other year they rotated them, which I think is something beautiful that they do. But it can be emotionally charged, but Ray's there to help you let your things go. And sometimes it's not about the money. Ray helps families decide what should be sold, kept, or donated with compassion. And so you just kind of have to make that decision in what you want to do and what's right for your family. And his takeaway: transparency, documentation, and trust the process to reduce the tension between siblings and heirs. And if you are the senior, the best thing that you can do, the biggest gift you can give your family, the biggest gift you can give your family, is letting them know exactly what they can have after you're gone, because it will stop any sort of fights. And that kind of leads me into the gals that sorted out San Diego, Jen and Tori. They talk about how downsizing is a collaboration and not control, and they encourage family-led room-by-room approaches, which I think is really unique. And they talk about spending a specific amount of time there, whether it's every Saturday from 10 to 12. This is what we're going to do. We're just going to focus this 2 hours on this specific task in this specific room. So there isn't this overwhelm and you're hopscotching from room to room to room. They acknowledge sentimental items by creating memory boxes and digitizing photos. And this keeps legacy intact while reducing clutter. And so one of the things I've done and I've started to do after talking to these ladies is, if you're a Gen Xer like me, like way back in the day, we did obviously not have cell phones. We had disposable cameras. And so I was always had disposable cameras and taking pictures, and the disposable camera was in my pocket. And then I would take it to Rite Aid and get the pictures developed, and then they would end up in a photo album. And I have so many photo albums. I don't know about you, but I have so many photo albums, and we are getting rid of our storage locker. And so I'm like, no, I cannot keep these. So I sent off my photos to be digitized. And I'm looking forward to my photos coming back, because then I can have them on a jump drive. I can look at them whenever I want. I can share them easily with my friends. And it's just a great way to reconnect with people when you can find a picture and just send it back. And it's great because we weren't around when social media was around, so we didn't end up putting our stuff out there. So that was pretty good. And they also teach families how to balance empathy with action, so the process doesn't stall or spiral into arguments, which I think is extremely, extremely important. Because just remember, they're things, right? They're things, and we can't take things with us, but sometimes there's a thing that we want. And when my mom passed tragically 19 years ago this December, I didn't get her cookbook. But what I did get is I got copies of the cookbook and the pages. And what was most important to me was to see her writing. And so I've now taken the recipes and slid them into just a black binder. And I've done slid them into the plastic pages so I could see her writing. And that's what's most important to me, is I'm preserving the writing. And that means a lot to me. So, just remember, there are things that we can do to preserve memories. All right, let's talk some Medicare, because this was an eye-opener. So Esther Sulistio, who's our Medicare insurance expert, she talked about how Medicare isn't a one-size-fits-all. She broke down the difference between Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement, highlighting that choice depends on care needs and budget. So you really need to listen to that episode. That's probably one of my most listened to episodes, was the one with Esther. She talks about many families miss deadlines or pick the wrong plan due to confusion, and she emphasized work with a local trusted agent, not a call center. You want somebody who is local. You want someone who is boots on the ground that you can actually talk to, and you're not going to be shoved off to this huge call center somewhere in Kansas. Not that there's anything wrong with Kansas, but you just want to work with somebody who's local. Programs like Extra Help and Medicare Savings can cover premiums, copays, and prescriptions for seniors on fixed incomes, and asset checks are no longer part of the application. So this is why it's so important to talk to an expert like Esther, because she's up to date on everything Medicare. And especially now with everything that's going on in our current administration, you need to have that person that knows what's going on and is keeping up with the changes. Her number one advice: be patient with your parents' preferences and values, especially when your ideas differ. We also talked with Eric Barbarita. He is our Delaware Statutory Trust expert. Now, let's kind of reverse and talk a little bit about what a DST is. And we're going to go over this in detail, but let's say you have a rental property, you want to 1031 exchange it. You can 1031 exchange into a Delaware Statutory Trust, which is basically going to give you checks every month to help pay for mom and dad's care. But this is for rental income properties only. So DSTs are an alternative traditional 1031 exchanges for seniors who want passive income without property management headaches. Okay, so that's important. Now, unlike a REIT, which is a real estate trust, a DST are IRS approved for 1031 use and are designed for low maintenance, professionally managed assets like self-storage or long lease rental, like an Amazon warehouse or CVS, or they're going to invest in $100 million apartment building somewhere in Texas, something like that. So you'll get a part of that. Now, this is perfect for aging investors who are tired of tenants, toilets, and trash, but want to keep building equity and cash flow. So if you want to get rid of that problem tenant, because let's face it, tenants, if they know that a landlord is old, they tend to pull on heartstrings, and they tend to get a little aggressive and screw them over. And So if you want out of that, we get your loved one out. I go and sell the asset. Eric takes the money from that and he puts it into a Delaware trust, and then you get a check every single month. Eric talked about how one client sold a 12-unit property in Ramona and doubled his monthly income and never had to go and fix another microwave again. So that's really important, because a lot of our boomer investors, most of them do not have property managers. The guy down the street, I run into him all the time. He owns his 2 apartment buildings right next door to each other down the street from me, and I run into him. Great guy, but he comes and he manages everything. He does everything himself, except the lawn work. He does have a gardener that comes out and does that. And so if you don't want to have to deal with that anymore, you don't have to. That is the good news. You do not have to deal with that. We can just sell the property and roll you into a 1031 exchange, Delaware Statutory Trust. And if you'd like information on that, I can put you in contact with Eric and he can invite you. They do a lunch every month that talks very specifically about doing a DST. Well, I hope today's recap reminded you just how much support, guidance, and practical advice is out there. From Medicare to move managers to estate planning, you do not have to navigate this process all by yourself. So if you're facing a transition or you just want a sounding board, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. Whether you're selling your home, you need a connection to one of our podcast experts, or you just have questions, call me. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode. And if there is a topic or a guest you'd like to hear from, message me directly. You can also catch bonus content and behind-the-scenes clips on my YouTube channel and social feeds. Until next time, keep moving forward with grace, courage, and have a good dose of humor. Take care, everyone. I'll see you on the next one.